A generous waitress covered the cost of an elderly man's coffee, unaware that he was a billionaire in search of his future partner. The downtown cafe hummed with the energy of the morning, while rain softly tapped on the expansive windows, creating a dreamy haze over the city outside. The deep scent of freshly brewed coffee intertwined with the earthy fragrance of rain-drenched pavement, crafting a cozy atmosphere for those looking to escape the gloomy weather. In the midst of the clinking of cups and the soft hum of chatter, the door creaked open, ushering in a brisk draft that swept through the cafe. A man in his early 50s entered, his worn coat soaked from the rain and his scuffed shoes making subtle impressions on the gleaming floor. His salt and pepper hair was damp, clinging to his forehead, while his eyes reflected a weariness that hinted at the trials he had faced. With a tentative step, he made his way to the counter, his eyes darting across the menu before finally resting on the young barista at the register. In a tone so soft it was almost inaudible, he asked for a plain black coffee. As the barista processed the order, the man delved into his pockets, his actions becoming more and more hurried as he sought out his wallet. His complexion drained of color, and he gulped nervously before uttering a word, his tone laced with a hint of shame. "Apologies," he faltered. "It seems I may have forgotten my wallet at home. If it's okay, may I linger here for a bit until the rain subsides?" The barista, a young man with a defined jawline and a quick wit, crossed his arms over his chest and smirked. "Listen here, my friend," he exclaimed, capturing the gaze of those around us. "This is not a refuge. We do not provide complimentary items to those who are unable to make a payment. Without funds, your stay is not possible." The man's cheeks turned a deep crimson as he stepped back, his gaze flickering to the floor. "I wasn't requesting a complimentary drink," he murmured. "Simply a spot to find some shelter for a while." A mocking laugh emanated from a nearby table, where a cluster of elegantly attired guests sat, keenly watching the unfolding drama. "Picture this." One of them scoffed, walking into a cafe empty-handed and anticipating service. "Some individuals possess an utter lack of shame," another interjected, their tone laced with contempt. "It seems times are challenging if those in need are now aiming to become experts in cafe culture." The man's shoulders slumped as he faced the door, the burden of shame weighing down on him. From across the room, Emma, a 29-year-old waitress with auburn hair gathered into a casual ponytail, watched the interaction unfold. Her hazel eyes, typically warm and inviting, now glowed with indignation. With a steady hand, she maneuvered through the bustling cafe, a tray filled with empty cups and plates balanced expertly as she made her way to the counter. With a purposeful clatter, she set the tray down and dug into the pocket of her simple uniform, pulling out a $5 bill and placing it assertively on the counter. "That's enough," she declared, her voice unwavering and distinct, slicing through the whispers that had started to circulate. The barista's confident smile wavered as he met her gaze. "Emma, what are you up to?" He let out a derisive laugh. "This individual comes at no cost to you. He can't simply waltz in here and anticipate freebies." Emma surveyed the gathered crowd, her demeanor steady and composed. "I'm taking care of his coffee," she remarked, not from a place of sympathy, but because I understand the feeling of being scrutinized for lacking resources. A scornful chuckle broke the silence from the corner of the room. "How admirable," a man scoffed, a server stepping into the spotlight. "Perhaps you anticipate receiving a suggestion from him down the line." Emma faced the room, standing tall, her voice filled with unwavering certainty. "Kindness is not a transaction," she asserted. "Demonstrating compassion does not lessen our worth. Rather, it is the act of belittling others that truly exposes one's own insignificance." The cafe hushed, the earlier teasing atmosphere giving way to a tangible air of contemplation. Emma glanced at the man again, her expression softening into a warm smile. "Please have a seat," she invited. "I'll deliver your coffee in just a moment. Do not allow the unkind remarks of others to determine your value." The man locked eyes with her, his gaze shimmering with unfallen tears. He nodded with a sense of satisfaction and settled into a chair by the window, watching as the rain poured down the glass in a steady stream. As Emma brewed his coffee, the ambience in the cafe transformed quietly. Patrons averted their gazes, the earlier mirth now giving way to a quiet introspection. In that moment, Emma, despite her humble circumstances and the disdain of others, radiated a profound sense of dignity and compassion. Once considered unworthy by those in his life, the man discovered comfort in the profound experience of being acknowledged and appreciated. The memory of the cafe lingered in Emma's thoughts, even as she finished clearing the last table of her shift. No one had addressed her directly since then, yet the gazes, the murmurs, and the heavy silence lingered in the atmosphere like a thick fog. The following morning, her manager Brian summoned her to the office. The cramped space was filled with the acrid scent of scorched coffee mingling with the sharpness of bleach. He instructed, "Please close the door." Emma complied. Brian folded his arms across his chest. "This is a professional endeavor, Emma, not a philanthropic initiative." She remained silent. He continued, asserting that the decision of who receives freebies is not yours to make. "If you wish to embody the spirit of Mother Teresa, perhaps consider doing so outside of work hours." "I paid for it," she stated with a serene composure. "That's not the crux of the matter," he retorted sharply. "Your actions caused discomfort for both your colleague and the customers." Emma gazed into his eyes. "No, he made a fool of himself." "Don't push me," Brian replied with a cutting tone. "Your role is to assist, not to instruct." A moment of stillness. "May I leave?" she inquired. "Step outside, and keep in mind your position." In the heart of the kitchen, Marcy and Josh lingered near the sink. Silence fell over the room as she entered. As she walked by, Marcy whispered just audibly, "Must be nice, playing the hero while still sharing rent with your little sister." Josh let out a soft laugh. She probably imagined he was hiding a fortune. Emma remained silent. She took hold of her coat, signed out, and ventured into the light drizzle beyond the door. The scent of damp asphalt mingled with the lingering traces of urban haze. She took her time. The apartment she occupied alongside Lily felt quite confined. A one-bedroom featuring peeling paint and a window that lets in the chill. Lily nestled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her body trembling slightly. "Hey!" Emma murmured softly, gently brushing her sister's forehead. Lily whispered, "You're late." Emma beamed. "Found myself unexpectedly drenched by the rain." She warmed up the leftover porridge, sprinkled in a touch of salt, and presented it to her sister. She then took a moment to examine her wallet. $3, a single subway token, a worn photograph of their mother. She gazed at the money, carefully folded it, and then slid it back into place. Absolutely no regrets, neither for the coffee nor for anything else. Once Lily succumbed to slumber, Emma positioned herself by the window, observing the rain cascade down the pane. Her reflection gazed back, weary and pale, yet beneath it all, a subtle strength still shimmered. Her mind wandered back to a time long past, perhaps 15 years ago, when their mother fell to the ground in a bustling street market. Individuals moved along, oblivious to their surroundings, save for a solitary figure who paused. A weathered woman in a tattered skirt knelt beside them, extending a cup of water and draping a shawl over Emma's shoulders. Emma was unaware of her name, yet the warmth of her kindness lingered in her memory. That moment transformed into a vow, so when she spotted that man in the cafe, drenched, humiliated, and unseen, there was no choice to consider. She took the necessary actions. The verdict held no significance. She was significant. That evening, as she prepared to extinguish the light, she softly murmured into the shadows, just for her own ears, "I would prefer to be ridiculed for taking a stand than to receive accolades for my silence." In that modest apartment, with only her dignity to hold on to, Emma experienced a feeling that was truly exceptional. Tranquility. For days had passed since the incident, for drawn-out shifts, saturated with murmurs barely caught and stares that seemed to stretch just a moment too long. Emma had come to terms with her invisibility, yet now she found herself seen for something she never desired, and the weight of the stares pressed down on her more than any silence could. That morning, the cafe buzzed with its familiar rhythm, cups clinking, steam hissing, and the gentle murmur of idle conversation. Emma glided from table to table, deftly wiping away crumbs, stacking plates with precision, and offering warm, polite smiles. At that moment, the doorbell rang out. She hesitated to raise her gaze initially, yet an undeniable change was in the air. The atmosphere became quiet, and a sense of intrigue pulled at her. She cast a fleeting look at the door. A tall figure strode in, clad in a charcoal suit and a silk scarf, his salt and pepper hair meticulously styled, the sound of his polished shoes echoing softly against the floor. He appeared to be a figure suited for a glass tower, rather than this unassuming cafe. Yet, there was an undeniable depth in his gaze. Emma stood still. He refrained from approaching the counter. He approached the table by the window, the very spot where a drenched, embarrassed man had once lingered, and settled into the chair in silence. Emma clutched the fabric tightly in her grasp. Her heart pounded. She walked over with a menu in hand, caught in a dilemma between feigning ignorance and revealing her true thoughts. Just as she was about to speak, he lifted his gaze. "I'm not here to give commands." She hesitated. He stated that he had just a single question. "What motivated you to assist me?" Emma's eyes fluttered open. I simply couldn't bear to see it unfold. You were unaware of my existence. There was no benefit for you." She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "You appeared to be someone who wouldn't seek assistance. You appeared as if you were being diminished. I completely understand that sensation." She settled into her seat opposite him, placing the menu to the side. "At the age of 17, she recounted, my mother fell to the ground in a marketplace. No assistance was offered. They circled her as if she were an issue to be solved. Except for one woman, an elderly lady who had very little to her name. She remained, and I vowed to emulate her if the opportunity ever arose." He remained silent. He simply absorbed the words. "On that day," she whispered, "I recalled that vow." A brief pause lingered in the air. Then he inquired, "Do you indulge in reading?" Emma opened her eyes wide. "Literature?" He gave a slight nod. "I once did. Not a great deal recently. I enjoyed tales of everyday individuals undertaking courageous acts." He offered a subtle smile. "Excellent decision." They began to converse. Concerning literature, urban landscapes, melody, Bach, Chopin. Why do individuals become harsh when they sense a lack of control? He brought up writers that Emma had never encountered, and she didn't feign familiarity with them. Her response was filled with genuine curiosity, devoid of any pretense. Time slipped away. Then additional. The sounds of the cafe blended into a soft, indistinct murmur. At a certain moment, Emma let out a laugh. Genuinely chuckled, for the first time in days. "You're different from what I imagined," she remarked. He lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. "What were your expectations?" She gave a slight shrug. "A person who simply wished to express gratitude and fade away." He cast his gaze downward before locking eyes with her once more. For quite some time he remarked, "I have possessed wealth. Yet only a handful of individuals have restored my sense of humanity." "On that day you certainly did." Emma remained silent. There was no necessity for her to do so. At that instant they existed as merely two individuals. Neither a server nor a tycoon. Neither an outsider nor a rescuer. Only two spirits. At last it has been observed. And neither of them would ever let it slip from their memories. Exactly 1 week had passed since their second meeting when Emma found the envelope waiting for her. No return address was provided. Missing sender's name. Inside, a substantial ivory card awaits, adorned with gold lettering and the unmistakable emblem of the Ainsley A. A 5-star establishment nestled in the city's core, renowned more for accommodating heads of state than for serving patrons from quaint local cafes. Her name was prominently displayed at the top. Emma L. Bennett, invited by Charles H. Everlyn. She gazed at it for what felt like an eternity, the afternoon light illuminating the gold seal as if it held a hidden truth. It was challenging her to take the plunge. She nearly decided against it. Yet, A blend of curiosity and an unusual tightness in her chest compelled her to the hotel lobby 3 days later, clad in her sole nice blouse, shoes borrowed from her roommate, and her hair pinned back with unsteady hands. As she crossed the threshold of the revolving doors, it was as if she had been transported to an entirely different realm. Gleaming marble floors, chandeliers cascading with illumination, individuals moving with a serene sense of privilege. She made her way to the front desk, her voice trembling slightly. "It seems to be Emma Bennett, if I'm not mistaken. I have a meeting scheduled." The concierge acknowledged her request with a knowing nod and gestured towards a secluded lounge on the 21st floor. "Mr. Everlyn will be with you shortly, Mr. Everlyn." She ascended in the elevator, enveloped in silence, her heart pounding in her chest. The lounge exuded a serene elegance, rich in luxury. Luxurious leather chairs, the gentle murmur of jazz floating through the air, and a breathtaking view that stretched across the skyline, reminiscent of a regal chamber high above the city. She lingered by the window, questioning her place in a world so foreign, when suddenly, the door behind her creaked open. She pivoted. Charles. Yet, neither the man from the cafe nor the sharply dressed figure from days past appeared. This Charles carried himself with an air of sophistication, as if draped in a perfectly fitted ensemble. Accompanied by 2 aides who paused momentarily at the entrance, he entered with a presence that effortlessly commanded respect. It just was. "Emma," he murmured, his voice velvety and deep. "I appreciate your presence." She attempted to smile, yet her voice faltered. "This isn't precisely a cafe." He motioned to the table by the window, elegantly arranged with tea, fresh fruit, and a pristine espresso waiting to be savored. "Please," he said, "take a seat." She complied, her mind swirling with uncertainty about whether she was being celebrated or scrutinized. He positioned himself opposite her, his hands neatly folded. He started, wanting to speak face to face, as anything else would seem insincere. She listened in silence. He introduced himself as Charles H. Everlyn. "I established Everlyn Holdings. Our operations span across 12 countries, focusing mainly on infrastructure and investments that create social impact." Emma's eyes fluttered open. She parted her lips, yet silence lingered in the air. He quickly clarified that he wasn't pretending to be someone else. "Yet that morning at the cafe, I opted for a more casual look. Indeed, I intentionally left my wallet behind. I was curious about what individuals would perceive when there was nothing to be gained." Emma gazed at the tea before her, hoping it would provide some insight. "My wife passed away 15 years ago," he continued, his voice now barely above a whisper. "Sudden cancer, and we never had children. Following her passing, I lost faith in others and ceased to believe in the authenticity of kindness. I started my journey incognito, exploring cities and towns, not merely to witness the world, but to discover who still carried passion within them." He gazed at her intently. "On that day I discovered someone." Emma felt a constriction in her throat. She was torn between a sense of honor and a wave of horror. "You set me up?" she asked, her voice trembling just a bit. "No," he replied softly. "I did not initiate contact with you. I never requested anything. I merely observed. And you made your choice," she said, shaking her head slowly. "I'm torn between gratitude and a sense of being played." He gave a slight nod. "I comprehend that. Truly." Emma rose suddenly, her chair gliding gently over the rug. "What do we do next?" she inquired. "You inform me that I've successfully navigated your small morality test. And then what follows? Do you hand me a check, extend a job offer, or perhaps present me with a car?" Charles remained unyielding. "I present no offerings, unless you decide to listen to my words." Emma's breath quivered, her feelings a tempest of conflict, disbelief, indignation, intrigue, wonder. He rose as well, approached the window, his hands intertwined behind him. "I wasn't trying to put you to the test, Emma," he reiterated. "I found myself on a quest, seeking something I believed the world had forgotten, perhaps even someone to help me remember what it truly means to be acknowledged, not as a wealthy figure, not as a weight, but simply as a person." She observed him quietly. "I don't wish to purchase your appreciation," he remarked. "But I'm curious, would you be open to having coffee with me once more? Free from expectations, devoid of pretenses." Emma gazed at him, not at the polished suit, the opulent lounge or the towering skyline, but into his eyes, those same eyes that had once been cast down, glistening with shame, gripping a worn coat and pleading for shelter from the rain. The figure before her was the very same one she had seen in the cafe, and in that moment it felt more significant than anything else. She exhaled gently. "I'm not sure what this is," she said gently, "or what you might believe it to be, but I am certain of who I am." Charles glanced at her, a silent message lingering in his gaze. "And who might that be?" he inquired. Her lips curved into a smile. "Petite, serene, sincere. A person who acts without seeking recognition, and one who is willing to step back if that's all this amounts to." He inclined his head, a subtle smile playing at the edges of his lips. "That is what sets you apart." For the first time, Emma understood that this was not merely an examination. It was an invitation, not to riches, but to something much more elusive, the chance to be noticed and to leave a lasting impression. It's not about the audience you captivate, but about the person you decide to become in the quiet moments. Emma was taken by surprise when Charles reached out to her once more. She pondered that their final exchange at the hotel might have marked the conclusion of something peculiar, dreamlike, a fleeting instance beyond her everyday existence, a glimpse she had caught but would never be permitted to cross into. However, the following afternoon, yet another envelope made its way to me. This time, there's no gold embossing. Only her name, elegantly penned with precision. Within lay a brief note, penned in the same unwavering script. "Emma, I will be heading to Montreal next week. I make an annual visit. The serene in that place, tranquil. I would appreciate your presence. Not for commerce, not for protocol, just companionship, just dialogue. No assumptions, only a heartfelt invitation. Charles." A round-trip train ticket was nestled within. She grasped it in her hand for what felt like an eternity. Later that night, in the tight confines of their small apartment kitchen, Emma fixed her gaze on the rice bubbling away on the stove, while her younger sister Lily, wrapped in blankets on the couch, coughed gently between sips of tea. Lily remarked on the silence, noting, "You're quiet." Emma offered a subtle smile. "Isn't that uncommon?" Lily inclined her head. "Are you contemplating him?" Emma gave a slight nod. She confided in Lily about everything, the invitation, the ticket, and the way it made her feel as though a door had swung open, one she had never dared to approach before. She expressed uncertainty about her place in his world. "What if I make a fool of myself? What if it alters my self-perception, or his perception of me?" Lily observed her intently for a moment. Then she uttered a phrase that Emma would always remember. "Your entire existence has been dedicated to creating room for those around you. Perhaps it's time to discover how space transforms when it is crafted with intention for you." That night, Emma found herself wide awake. She lay awake, attuned to the rain's gentle rhythm against the window pane, the distant hum of city buses below, and the soft, persistent ticking of the old clock on the wall. She recalled the cafe, the laughter that echoed, the scoffs that pierced, the judgments that lingered. She reflected on Charles's eyes, modest, probing, deeply human. She recalled the words of someone who often advised, "Don't sit back and wait for life to approach you. At times, you must venture out and seek it for yourself." With the dawn breaking, she had come to her conclusion. She packed with care. A single bag containing a well-loved journal, 2 changes of clothes, and the book that had lingered unfinished for months, waiting patiently for her attention. She placed a note on the fridge for Lily, accompanied by grocery money and a hug that seemed to stretch out in time, holding a warmth that felt more profound than usual. At the train station, she lingered on the platform, her heart suspended in a delicate balance of uncertainty and optimism. As the train arrived and the doors parted with a gentle sigh, she moved ahead, not toward opulence, not into a dream, but into the realm of uncertainty. Charles sat in the cabin, alone and unaccompanied, with no bodyguards or distractions. He was positioned by the window, a book resting on his lap, while 2 coffees awaited him on the table. He glanced up as she walked in and smiled, not the rehearsed grin of someone accustomed to being catered to, but something more genuine, something heartfelt. "I didn't expect to see you here," he remarked. Emma took a seat opposite him, placing her bag softly beside her feet. "I didn't think I would either," she replied. "But then I recalled, the world remains unchanged unless you step into it." He nodded with contemplation. "I'm not providing anything," he stated, "no guarantees, no roads lined with riches. I just considered that perhaps it's time I ceased my solitary strolls." Emma gazed out the window, watching the city fade into a blur, the towering buildings surrendering to the embrace of trees, the steady rhythm of the train resonating in her chest like a heartbeat. She glanced over her shoulder at him. Perhaps, she suggested, we both required a reminder that we still have the freedom to select a different path. Thus, the train propelled them onward, 2 unexpected companions united not by fate, but by their own decision. Emma was uncertain about the destination of her adventure. For the first time in her life, she faced the answer without fear, no longer chasing after escape, wealth, or fantasy. She stepped into a realm of sincerity, and in that moment, she understood it was sufficient. The subsequent days unfolded in a manner that was entirely foreign to Emma. No luxurious accommodations, no extravagant boats, no opulent brunches. Instead, she discovered herself awakening in serene villages and weathered towns, in simple guest houses and communal spaces, traveling in the back of Charles's vintage Jeep with the windows rolled down and the breeze dancing through her hair. He didn't embody the lavish lifestyle that the world assumed was his as a billionaire. They explored orphanages on the fringes of small towns, where children eagerly ran into Charles's embrace, calling out his name, not for the toys he brought, but for the way he cherished their birthdays, favorite stories, and shared laughter. They visited shelters for those in recovery, where Charles remained mostly silent, yet absorbed every word with keen attention. They lingered on the porches of homes partially constructed by unseen hands he had financed, savoring soup prepared by those unaware that the man seated before them possessed a significant portion of the skyline. Emma observed everything with a sense of quiet wonder. He remained unassuming, never seeking recognition or acclaim. While sorting boxes at a community food pantry in Vermont, she once inquired of him, "Why don't you share who you are?" He shrugged, as they ceased to engage with me as if I were a person. Wherever she looked, she noticed the same thing. His gaze wandering, not in pursuit of appreciation but in quest of a bond. On several occasions, she glimpsed her reflection in a window and recognized a smile that had eluded her for years. On a tranquil evening, in a cozy cabin perched at the forest's edge in Quebec, they lingered on the porch, enveloped by the melodic chorus of crickets and the rich aroma of pine that filled the air. A solitary lantern cast its glow on the wooden table that lay between them. Charles prepared a soothing cup of chamomile tea. Emma nestled into a cozy wool blanket, her gaze fixed on the steam swirling up from her cup. They hadn't exchanged words in some time, yet the stillness was not a result of discomfort. The silence enveloped us, a shared breath in the stillness. At last, Charles reclined in his chair, gazing into the shadows beyond. He mentioned that he had received offers of companionship, solace, and even affection from others. He hesitated, then faced her, his voice softer, "Yet I don't require anyone to care for me. I seek a person who truly grasps the reasons behind my passions. A person who values authenticity over spectacle. Simply being there is enough." Emma hesitated before responding. She allowed the words to linger in the space between them, both weighty and fragile. She gazed at him, her eyes shimmering with the glow of the lantern and hinting at a profound depth beneath the surface. "I'm not sure if I fit that description," she admitted candidly. "I'm not sure I grasp all the reasons behind your identity." She paused for a moment to collect her thoughts. "Yet, I can say this. I've never felt more authentic than I do in your presence." Charles remained expressionless. He appeared far from victorious. He appeared serene, as though he had just received the revelation he hadn't realized he was longing for. They refrained from making contact. They refrained from seeking anything deeper, as their connection transcended mere closeness. It revolved around acknowledgement. Two individuals, separated by generations, molded by contrasting experiences, discovering a subtle harmony in the silent gaps of their wounds. Later that night, Emma positioned herself by the cabin window, pen in hand, pouring her thoughts into her journal. Her thoughts arrived in fragmented phrases and solitary terms: hushed, discovered, observed. She gently closed the book, nestled it beneath her pillow, and murmured softly into the quietude. I wasn't seeking romance, yet perhaps I inadvertently discovered something bolder. Above them, the stars twinkled softly, silent observers of a narrative still in progress, not of dreams or destiny, but of two individuals who had once thought they were solitary, until they discovered they were not. 3 months. 3 months filled with tranquil mornings and leisurely dialogues, where listening took precedence over speaking, and the world was observed not from lofty heights, but from the humble vantage of street-side stoops and bustling community spaces. Emma had transformed, yet not in the manner that one might typically anticipate. She was not richer. She maintained her usual style. Her shoes bore the marks of time, their edges frayed, while her journal overflowed with hasty scribbles and well-loved creases. Yet her spirit that had transformed. She moved with purpose, her words measured and deliberate, no longer feeling the urge to justify her value to anyone. Charles observed it as well. Upon their return from a visit to a women's shelter in Detroit, he requested a moment to speak with her in private. Perched on the rooftop terrace of a repurposed church they were financing, they gazed at the skyline shimmering in the background. He presented her with a plain folder, devoid of embellishments or fanfare. Within were the legal papers needed to create a foundation bearing her name, the Emma Bennett Opportunity Fund. She raised her gaze gradually. I wish to create a legacy, he expressed. However, not under my name. I've had my fill of that. I desire the next girl, the one serving tables, looking after her sister, believing no one notices her. I wish for her to understand that someone cared. Emma remained silent. Not at this moment. Charles pressed on. There's no need for you to run it. There's no need for your involvement at all. Yet it will persist, for you were here. Because one individual decided to recognize another not for their possessions, but for their true essence. Emma set the folder down on the table with care, her fingers lingering on the edge of the cover. I have no words, she murmured. Charles beamed. There's no need for words. Yet she did. She inhaled deeply, calm and confident. It is a privilege, she expressed, beyond what words can convey. However, if it's acceptable, I would like to explore another option, he nodded, offering support. She expressed her desire to create something independently. It doesn't have to carry my name, or perhaps yours. I wish to build everything from the very beginning. It's not that I don't appreciate what you're presenting. Yet, it was the faith someone had in me that allowed me to find faith in myself. Her voice remained steady. I wish to extend that same conviction to others. Not by means of wealth, but by the essence of being there. By means of attentive listening. By standing by when others are absent. Charles paused, enveloped in a moment of silence. Then he grinned. Not with surprise, but with the serene, glowing pride of one who had always anticipated this day would arrive. You've already done that, he remarked. Emma gazed at him, at the individual who had once lingered nervously in a cafe, mocked and overlooked, only to transform into her reflection, her guide, her companion. They existed without a name to define them, neither lovers nor partners, and not entirely family. Yet, there is a desire for something that lasts longer, a form of recognizing one's essence, an undeniable truth that needed no explanation. He extended his hand across the table, gently grasping hers. Regardless of your choices, he murmured gently, I will always support you, without fail. She nodded, her eyes shimmering with emotion. In that instant, silence spoke volumes. Their narrative had always steered clear of extravagant proclamations. It was constructed from subtle decisions, steadfast faith, and the bravery to release one another. Not from a place of loss, but from a foundation of trust. They lingered until the sun sank beneath the horizon, casting elongated golden shadows over the city they had come to perceive not merely as a location, but as a vow. A vow that compassion, freely given, would inevitably return in some form. Sometimes, the purest expression of love is allowing someone to forge their own path, fully aware that they take a part of you with them at every turn. The rain had come back, gentle and persistent, as the last letters were inscribed onto the cafe window. The initial mug. Emma stood on the sidewalk, umbrella poised, observing as her imagination materialized before her eyes. This was more than merely a cafe. The setting was the cafe. The moment when it all started. Where a figure once lingered, drenched and humiliated, for the oversight of leaving his wallet behind. In that moment, she, a waitress with scarce resources, had extended a $5 bill, unwittingly altering the course of her existence. At this moment, the space was hers, yet its true significance lay in the fact that it belonged to everyone. She meticulously reconstructed it from the ground up, applying fresh paint to the walls, restoring the floors and updating the lighting, all with the support of volunteers, generous small donors, and the subtle motivation from an individual who sought no acknowledgement. Inscribed beneath the glass emblem was the saying, "No one should have to earn kindness." The cafe radiated with vibrant energy, cozy illumination, gentle melodies, rows of literature, and the subtle murmur of dialogue. A chalkboard by the counter was devoid of any price listings. It stated, "Your initial cup is complimentary, your next, if possible, on another." The piano in the corner lingered in anticipation of the afternoon trio. Tables held not numbers but inscribed words. Hope, trust, begin. Emma lingered by the window, observing the ebb and flow of people below. A weary caregiver, a courier, a parent with her children, a sanctuary for respite, for respect. Suddenly, the door swung open. An older man entered, his back bent, drenched from the downpour. His hands shook slightly as he grasped the door. He appeared hesitant, tinged with a sense of regret. A youthful barista approached with confidence. "Excuse me, sir, but this area is reserved for customers only. If you don't have..." Emma moved across the room swiftly, placing a soft hand on the barista's shoulder before he could complete his thought. "It's all right," she said, then shifted her gaze to the man. "Would you prefer a seat by the window?" He acknowledged with a sense of appreciation. She beamed with joy. "What can I assist you with today?" "Just something cozy," he whispered, to linger for a while. "The morning has stretched on endlessly." Emma's voice took on a gentle quality. "Let us extend it, infusing it with a touch of tranquility." She cast a fleeting look at the barista. "Here, the initial cup is always complimentary, without any inquiries or embarrassment." He nodded, his eyes wide, a lesson firmly grasped. As she made her way to the back, an unseen force pulled at her. She glanced out the window, and there he stood, Charles, positioned on the opposite side of the street, sheltered by a dark umbrella, with the collar of his coat turned up, his expression serene, and his eyes radiating warmth. He stood there, silent and still, observing without a gesture, without stepping over the threshold. She locked eyes with him, and in that quiet instant, an unspoken connection formed between them. Thankfulness, goodbye, and an additional sentiment, a vow. With a single nod, he pivoted and disappeared into the downpour. Later, during the soft opening, Emma stood next to the piano, microphone in one hand and a warm cup in the other. She surveyed the bustling cafe, each chair occupied, the atmosphere rich with a sense of warmth. "Long ago," she started, "I covered the cost of someone's coffee. I was unaware of his identity. I merely witnessed someone being diminished, and I found myself unable to turn my gaze elsewhere." She took a moment to stop. "That cup set me back $5, yet it offered me a fresh perspective on life." Some nodded in agreement, while others dabbed at their tears. "I believed I was guiding a lost soul," she remarked. "But in reality, he led me to discover a part of myself I never realized I could embrace." She placed the cup on the table. This cafe transcends mere coffee sales. It embodies the essence of presence, a commitment to being there when others choose not to be. Her voice became more gentle. A man once shared with me that kindness doesn't require remembrance. It simply needs to be perpetuated, and she smiled. Thus, we find ourselves engaged in this endeavor, one cup at a time. Almost as an afterthought, she remarked that some loves exist beyond romance. Some lives transform with nothing more than a simple act of kindness and the bravery to truly embrace it. The audience erupted in applause. A saxophone's notes filled the air. And in the distance, a first cup was poured for someone unaware of their need until that very moment. And thus, the cycle commenced once more. We appreciate your presence on this emotional journey, which started with a simple gesture of goodwill and blossomed into something much more profound than they could have ever imagined. Emma required no grand intervention. She sought neither riches nor accolades. On a dreary morning, when others turned away, she simply chose to show compassion. Sometimes that single act is enough to transform not just one life but two. If this narrative resonated with you, sparked inspiration, or brought to mind the subtle strength of kindness, please remember to like, comment, and above all, subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. Here we share narratives that mend, inspire, and reconnect us with the essence of our humanity. Until next time, when another spirit yearns for recognition.